Secretary of Education and Fox News contributor Bill Bennett to talk about this shocking report card from the land of Lincoln and the larger issues at hand. Bill, always great to see you. I'd like to begin, if I could, with this Wall Street Journal piece with the subheadline that reads, "The land of Lincoln is failing its children and covering it up." And it goes on to read, in part, quoting here, statewide in 2019, 36% of all third grade students could read at grade level. That's an F, and that's the good news. The number drops to 27% for Hispanic students and 22% for black students statewide. In certain public school systems, the numbers plummet to single digits. In Decatur, 2% of black third graders are reading at grade level and only 1% are doing math at grade level. We aren't often speechless, but the extent to which that performance is betraying a generation of school children is hard to put into words. Bill, it's not just awful. It's embarrassing, and it should not be tolerated. Your thoughts?
No, absolutely, and I think I can put it into words. Let me note a clarification. This was pre-pandemic, Trace. This is pre-pandemic. If anything, it's likely that those scores went down during the pandemic. That's been pretty much the case for every score we've gotten since the pandemic. So as bad as this was, it probably got worse. Now, let me just say something about reading to cut through it. If you can't read by the third grade, and most of these kids in Illinois cannot read proficiently by the third grade, your life chances are dramatically diminished. Your life chances at making a good income, at being successful, at living to an old age happy and married, they're all diminished. Reading is the key not only, obviously, to reading and to history, literature, it's also the key to math and science. Reading is the fundamental issue. I used to say when I was Secretary of Education, give me the first 3 years for reading and numeracy, learning how to count, learning how to read, forget everything else. And that is failure. And again, failure before the pandemic. Things only got worse because of it.
Yeah, and it's catastrophic failure. And here's the National Assessment of Educational Progress. I want to put this up if I can, Bill. It shows that math between 20 and 22, between fourth graders is down 7 points. Reading, as you emphasized, is down 5 points. And here's what Secretary Cardona said when he was shown these numbers. He said, quoting here, "Today's data confirmed the significant impact the prior administration's mismanagement of the pandemic has had on our children's progress and academic well-being. President Biden fought for the American Rescue Plan, which included $130 billion so schools could stay open and students could get the academic and mental health support they need. Our top priority remains to make sure states, schools, and districts are using these funds on strategies we know work, like well-resourced schools." And it's kind of interesting that the initial reaction is to blame the previous administration when we saw what the teachers' unions across the country did to schools throughout the pandemic.
Yeah, what was the famous line said during the Army McCarthy hearing? "Sir, do you have no shame?" I mean, do these guys have no shame? What was the loudest voice we heard, Trace, during the pandemic about keeping the schools closed? It was the teachers' union. Yeah. It was the endless repetition of Randy Weingarten's plea that the schools be absolutely safe and that the children be protected from each other. Well, the children were not in danger. We know that now. Many suspected it then. But people said, I said in April 2020, whatever damage is being done or might be done by the pandemic to children, which I think is minimal, will be nothing compared to academic loss, social loss, confidence, emotional loss, estrangement, and mental illness and drug use.
Yeah, and people forget, Bill, and I want to remind them that as well as the former education secretary, you were the first drug czar, and you always believe there is a connection. When you talk about education and drugs, there is a connection that is vastly overlooked.
The heavy use of marijuana, and I note the president has today pardoned all these people in federal prison, theoretically for possession of marijuana. They pled down, most of them, or there was another crime, another issue, and they went in on that charge. Nobody goes to federal prison just for smoking dope. But if you do smoke dope and you're young and you do it a lot, you know the two things that it hurts the most? Focus and attention. Do you need focus and attention while you're in school? I would think so. So there's a very important connection. There is research just out, and I will send it to your staff so we have it maybe for another occasion, showing by groups, by ethnic groups, who succeeded and who didn't during the pandemic, and correlating that to drug use. Asian students did not use drugs, rich, middle class, and even poor, and they were at the top. The rest of the news is pretty bad. Everybody else who was using drugs, their scores went down. So there's a connection. These are the minds of children, and it's not just the schools.
Great insight as always, Bill Bennett. Great to have you on, sir. Thank you.